Okay, kia ora koutou, ko Dave Murray, I'm Dave Murray, I'm one of the WERO researchers and also working as part of MOTU, which is a research institute down in Wellington, and I'm chairing a session, so it'll be, I guess it's a familiar format now by this time of the conference. We have 3 20-minute presentations and then open up for questions for covering all 3 presentations. Okay, so the first presenter is Kurt Kudice, who's going to talk, he's going to just dive straight in. Is that appropriate?
Very well.
So Kurt, over to you for 20 minutes, and I'll give you a 15-minute heads up.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Greetings, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm going to jump right into it because we're kind of familiar with all this now, but I'll preface a little bit. One of the things I say, and there are certain people in the room who know I say this all the time, we're here to lift each other up, not tear each other down, and I always start with that premise, but I invite challenge of discourse as well. So what I'd really love is that this is a really good example of challenging discourse which lifts us up. Those are crabs. Is anybody familiar with crabs in a bucket? This is from the Caribbean. That's a very important thing. These are the questions that I had in the abstract. I'm going to try and stay to those questions, but this conference has definitely had an effect on me. So I have ripped apart and put this presentation back together again. So we're going to work through this together, and I'm going to try and do my best to keep on time, and I'm going to be going very quickly. So here we go. This is me. That is a baby. This is about 10 years ago in the United States. I was doing my instructor training on a special program over there. And I am just praying this child doesn't cry and the mother doesn't reach over and smack me. But I've been through a lot of different stuff in aquatics, from scuba, sailing, swimming instructor, free diver, going on and on and on. But water has been a connective force with me for a long, long time. And also about where I'm from. So born, raised Canadian, parents are from the Caribbean, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. These are the 2 flags. I am 100% of each. I am not split. So I exist in both worlds. Genetically, the Caribbean is a place of connection and mix-up. So I am West African. I am Portuguese. I am Northern Indian. All these genetics go into me. And this is very relevant to how I've traveled the world and how I've seen things, because everywhere I go, somebody sees something different. So I go to cross over into Switzerland, and immediately the guard looks in and just goes, pull to the side, and brings over my Canadian passport and goes, you're Canadian? I go, yes, I am. They go, thank you very much. Just want to hear me speak, because they assumed I wasn't who I was. Egypt, try and talk to one of the dive instructors. He looks at me and just walks away. Somebody runs after him, speaks in Arabic for a while, and oh, they thought you were trying to be posh, not speaking Arabic. They thought I was Egyptian. All through Egypt, that was my experience. Aotearoa, New Zealand, standing at the door of a restaurant, waiting for my wife. MacPack, down vest, t-shirt, very informal. Woman comes in and goes, I'm here to meet a couple. Do you know where they are? And I go, you can go look. The maitre d' standing on the other side, white, blonde-haired, blue eyes, goes, maybe I should hire you. I get that all the time in New Zealand. Everywhere I go in the world, people see me differently, and I have to be aware of that. So it was really cool when I found this guy, West Indian, Jamaican born. Anybody familiar with Stuart Hall? Some are not. Known as the father of cultural studies in the UK, very well known over there, and communicates with me because of the West Indian connection, the way he speaks, the way he moves, the way he articulates. And he came up with this concept called race floating signifier, based on the floating signifier of language, which was from before him. The idea that this body that we're in, our color, our hair, our bone, signifies who we are before anything else and moves within culture and shifts within time and space. So that's what he was talking about. In aquatics, I live this because I have an image in my head of what I am. Everybody sees me differently, depending on which aquatic space I move into. This is from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This is where I learned to swim. I don't have a racial connotation. I know that sounds, but I really don't, because everybody belongs in the water. There wasn't any idea that one person might belong and one person might not. This is a film, this guy, Ed Akera, he's done a series of films in the UK called Blacks Can't Swim. And the idea over there that black people really, in their own circles, feel that they don't belong in the water. And it explores that and it talks about it. You've got this in the UK, you've got this in North America. You've got various circles around the world where people have lost touch with their connection to the water. Reflected in the drowning stats internationally. This is work by Stacey Pigeon. Basically around the world, people who are non-white drown more. Whether it be the quote-unquote low to middle income countries or quote high income countries where the marginalized drown more than the main population. This is true in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I was talking for years that we should be doing per capita stats in the publications of ethnic breakdown. They never ever did it. It was always the numbers. But if you look at the per capita stats, so I started calculating them on my own. I have data going back to 2017. Consistently, people who are non-white are drowning more. Specifically, Maori were always at the top of drowning. Ethnic communities and Pacific Islanders, close second. New Zealand Pakeha, always the lowest. Always, always the lowest. This is the latest publication from Drowning Prevention, not Drowning Prevention Auckland, Water Safety New Zealand, forgive me, 2024. They finally put per capita stats in. Now, I make this green not to forgive is that every death, every life is precious, every death is a loss. But look at the disparity between the two. Look at the rest. A very clear division. 42 out of the 72 deaths were non-white, from non-white ethnicities, I should say. That is real, that is now. And it's been going on for a long, long time. So I ran across this. Anybody familiar with this? The Waipuna model of water safety. This came in, this was actually in the National Strategy of 2020. Dr. Chanel Phillips was putting this forward, part of her PhD thesis. I latched onto this really quickly because it was a really different look on how we should be approaching drowning prevention. The circles, whakapapa, mātauranga, tikanga. And that's how their water safety structures were done. Very, very different than the Eurocentric mainstream of how things are done. And this was challenging for me because I'm going, hey, wait a second, we have all these other models and ways. I didn't learn in a swimming pool. Other people know how to swim. Why is it that everything's Eurocentric? And I started looking around the world at all these different groups of people around the world who naturally are in the water. You've got the Bajau and Moken people of the Pacific who are natural divers to the point where their anatomy actually adapts to diving. You've got my homeland. You've got Jeju Island. I spent a number of years in Korea. The women of the south of Jeju Island, similar to, I believe it's Okinawa. You've got women in the Pacific who have actually gone back to the sea to feed their families, taught themselves. We are aquatic. This guy, anybody know him? Duke Kahanamoku. Everybody knows him as a surfing dude. Before he was a surfing dude, he was an Olympian, swimming champion. His first Olympic trial race, he broke the world record on his own knowledge, never a swimming lesson in his life. We've got history. Dr. Gary Osmond has done some great work showing that there was transfer of knowledge from Aboriginal and Indigenous people to the swimming industry and Olympics in swimming styles. A lot of the styles you see today are directly based on Indigenous swimming styles. It's on paper. I'm not making this up. Dr. Kevin Dawson. This is a core pillar of some of my research because I finally found, hey, wait a second, Africans were aquatic. It all makes sense now because I know the Caribbean people are aquatic. Did we suddenly learn? No, we brought it over with us from Africa. And he goes into great detail showing how that was capitalized by the colonizer, by the slave masters. building boats, diving salvage. They made a lot of money because these guys were aquatic. And they kept calling them amphibious in the literature all over. Europeans, as they're exploring, are going, these people are amphibious. They're amazing how good they are in the water, because the Europeans were not. The Europeans actually weren't very good in the water. Surf life saving was created because too many white people were dying in New Zealand. Fact. They actually created it for that and created it over in Australia. It was a problem. It was known as the New Zealand death. So here's me trying to figure out, how do we get from this, where black people in the water was a natural thing, to black people thinking that they don't belong in the water at all? What drove this? Another little glimmer from Stuart Hall, this idea of doubling, this idea of the noble savage when times are calm, but if it's a place of power and you're a threat, it's not okay anymore. And I looked at the timeline. And again, this is all new. This is me exploring, and I welcome discourse on this. But if you look at what was happening at the Atlantic, when this transition of signifier was happening, uprising in Haiti, uprising in Jamaica, abolition of the slave trade, not because they were trying to be nice, but because they realized that black people actually could rise up and take power. All of this was going on, and then you move into the transfer of knowledge as well, around the same time. And yeah, that's Duke Kahanamoku, but he was teaching the world to surf. As Dr. Osmond pointed out, there's a lot of transition of knowledge in the water, transition of styles, transition of things happening. And Western Europeans were taking this on. And then you've got the good old scientific racism was happening as well. And I just ran across this gentleman, James Africanus Horton. And Dr. Horton, he was a medical doctor. This is around 1850. And he was trained in the UK. He was directly writing against the people of the Anthropological Society about their research, marginalizing, basically creating race as a biological sense. And he was criticizing them. They never answered any of his publications. And this whole trend of scientific racism has kept popping up in the aquatic space and disappearing and popping up and disappearing. This is my favorite one, and I call it the hold my beer moment, because McFarlane goes, hey, wait, I've done a study. Really, race isn't a factor biologically in swimming. And Nickel and Allen go, hold my beer. And they directly write to him and go, yeah, you're right. There's no race in it. But maybe there's race in how we learn, and it's more difficult because, and they go off and they start doing their research because they're swimming instructors and they think they know better. This is happening again and again and again. And I will say this is also happening right now. There's pending work being done in the UK. I will leave it there. So Hall kind of speaks to this like this. People want to believe that there's a biological difference, and they will go to a lot of length to try and make that happen, like soothers. So I answer that by saying, if anybody is thinking about doing biological research to try and disprove biological race, or don't even go there. It's a trap. Because as soon as you go there, you're actually legitimizing the conversation that's already been settled. We know that there is no biological race, anything to do with race. Skin, color, hair, bone, that's it. So let's not go back there. So again, we come back to the present, and I know I'm going to start running out of time, so I'm going to move faster, but these are things that have actually been said to me as I've been bringing up this whole idea of why aren't we focusing on ethnic communities? I'll bring your attention to the top. This is face-to-face conversation. Ethnic communities are not our priority right now. That was about 3 years ago. I go back to this. If this happened anywhere else, that number is the same as St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which is the top 3 in drowning in the Pan American area. It's huge internationally, but yet we're not talking about it. It's only 3% of the population. That's 150,000 people. Yep. So I'm zoning right in on this because this is happening right now. In their report, those are the 3 things that they're going to start focusing on. Nothing to do with the disparity of race and ethnicity in drownings. Remember, 42 out of the 72 have cultural implications that we should be looking at. It's not in the report. It's battered. And again, I invite anybody to go for it. I welcome discourse on it. But I've been saying this for a long time and nobody's listening. Why? I'll very quickly talk pedagogy of the oppressed. We talked about this at the conference. I went into this from an educational point of view and I found a format that actually is explaining exactly what I'm going through. This whole idea of, and I'll highlight the whole idea of allies because there are a lot of good people in water safety and drowning prevention, really good people. But you also have this sense that they don't quite believe that what you're bringing is as good as what they have. And in talking to Ed Akera from the UK, we actually came up with this in conversation. It just came out. We're trying to empower our people. They're trying to save us. And they will do anything to save us, including not listen to us. Very quickly, I'm going to put this up. The assumption of superiority. These conversations, anybody know this guy, Nigel Bigar? Do not buy his book. I encourage you to read his book. And I encourage you to have something that soothes you while you read the book because, my gosh, there's a nice chapter on Maori in there and how Maori were benefited by colonization. He's just talked over in Australia on this to politicians, etc. And these guys, Jordan Peterson up in the corner, I'm sorry, he's Canadian. We have to apologize. They are talking from a political sense and they're not quiet about it. They say, we are talking, this is a political action that we're making. So it needs a political response. Oh, we're over. Lots of good stuff going on. Life Saving Victoria, value of their program, $14.85 per dollar. Because they're investing in community, they're lifting community up. They're actually having community members teach things as opposed to them leading everything. And there's a lot of other stuff going on, transformative learning, I am out of time, whiteness in aquatics, documented, very real, hidden curriculum, the idea of humanizing aquatics. But I really want to get to this. This is the main point. And I'm not appropriating this, I'm inspired by it. The concept of aloha, Dukan Amoku, saving people because they were his people. It's not, it reminds me of family. They were family. This young lady who drowned in Korea, sank on the boat, took her life jacket off, gave it to one of the kids. 290-something kids drowned on this boat. As they're saving them, gave it to one of the kids, went back inside to get the rest of the kids. She drowned. They lived. She gave it to them because it was her little sister. Not because it reminded her of somebody that she needed to save. That is what the water teaches us. That is what the water has taught me, and that is what I want the industry to start realizing. Everybody matters. Everybody on your boat matters. And I'll leave it there. And I was going to talk about my time with the dolphins, but anybody want to ask me about that? They asked me about that afterwards. They're awesome, but they also connect with us. And that's me. Sorry, I was a little bit over time.